Compared to most other franchises, the Child's Play or Chucky films have been rather consistent with the lack of films being cancelled. But there are still some large gaps in the franchise when it comes to the ideas, which never seem to go any further than simply that, ideas. So today we're going to be looking at the unmade Child's Play films, and we'll see that even franchises where all the films have been written by the same guy can still have some messy moments. Now, first things first, most of the films mentioned here are not really unmade. One of them is an alternative version of a film that was made, and most of them are pretty much concepts that franchise god Don Mancini has come up with over the years, but never really created or hasn't created as of yet. There's still hope for quite a few of them. Still, I love Child's Play, and since May the 3rd is apparently National Paranormal Day or some shit, I thought I'd cover it this month for the shits and gigs. So, with that out of the way, let's look into the sort of unmade Child's Play movies. Before Child's Play became Child's Play, it was Bloody Buddy, and eventually Batteries Not Included, but the name was changed after Steven Spielberg began making a film under the title Batteries Not Included, so the much catchier Child's Play was chosen instead. Now, originally Bloody Buddy was written by franchise creator Don Mancini back when he was a junior at UCLA. It focused on a satirical look at how toys are marketed to children, as his father was a marketer of children's toys back in the 80s. He chose the name Buddy originally as a parody on the My Buddy dolls. Sadly though, the parody name ended up being a bit too similar to My Buddy, and it had to be changed to avoid any kind of copyright problems, and it eventually got changed to Good Guy to avoid a copyright issue, which I think is much better, but that might just be because we're 8 movies into a franchise, including the reboot, and I've heard the Good Guy name be said so many times, even if it did eventually change it back to Buddy for the remake. Now, there were some rather significant plot changes from this version of the film to the final one, as can be expected of any first draft of a script which ended up being made. First of all, Chucky was not actually going to be seen in his evil form until the end of the movie, most likely the 3rd act, and the film would have focused more on letting the audience decide if Andy was the killer or if Chucky was. Another fun fact, Chucky wasn't called Chucky yet, which is really bizarre to me. Speaking of which, the biggest significant change in my opinion would be that Chucky was not possessed by Charles Lee Ray. Instead, Andy does a blood pact with Chucky because they've made out of synthetic latex and have fake blood, because that's a disturbing concept for a kid's toy when we already have them vomiting, and it ends up manifesting as Andy's rage, only waking up to kill when Andy is asleep, which sounds like an interesting concept, but wow is it far from what happened in the final film. Andy's mother Karen would have been a huge workaholic, which caused Andy's rage to come out due to her neglect of him from being an overworked single mother. Andy's teacher would have also been a character, and the character was later reused as Miss Kettlewell in Child's Play 2, so that's fun. A large change would have been that Chucky would have killed Karen, aka Andy's mother, in the original version of this film, and Chucky would also try to kill Andy, as in his mind, whenever Andy's asleep, Chucky is awake, so Andy sleeping forever would make Chucky awake forever, something which the final film did sort of look into, with Chucky replacing Andy as the person in charge of his body. Now, because of all the changes, there's a lot of people involved in the first Child's Play, and from this version of the script to the released movie, other creators of the film had a lot of input with it. First, John Lafayette was added as a co-writer who introduced the idea of someone dead possessing a good guy doll, and he ended up choosing the name Chucky after producer David Kirshner came up with an intro scene of Charles Lee Ray being introduced and dying, as well as the idea of a soul being important. He also chose the name Charles Lee Ray, which is pretty damn fun. And finally, director Tom Holland added voodoo aspects such as a soul transfer, the Mr. Dead guy with all the voodoo crap, as well as Chucky's partner who ditched him, Eddie Caputo. Overall, as interesting as the original version of Child's Play does sound, I honestly like the changes that were added to the movie we ended up getting. This version definitely sounds much more like a first draft compared to the relatively tight script we ended up with for the final film. However, it should be noted that there is a 3-hour-long cut of the original Child's Play, which I will go into next week for Child's Play episode of The Lost. Quick mention here, essentially for part 3, there was an idea at one point for the Chucky blood thing that happens at the start, which causes Chucky to go into one doll, to be centered around several different dolls, which sounded awesome, but because the 3rd film was essentially rushed and the budget was slashed to hell, they couldn't end up doing it, but the concept was later reused for Cult of Chucky. Now, long before the admittedly okay, if unnecessary remake of Child's Play we got last year, the concept of rebooting Child's Play after the critical and financial disappointment of Seed of Chucky was a massive possibility. Quickly reminding people that around about the time this movie came out, both Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street's remakes had come out to a huge financial success, some of them even being the biggest of the franchise, and Chucky seemed to be next on that crappy cash grab train, but it just never happened. Mancini explained in an interview that there were some talks about the movie as the other slashers franchises had seen financial success, but the conversation stopped after they realised that the remakes were very short successes and noticeably annoyed many of their fans. Eventually though, this idea of a reboot slowly changed into the awesome sequel that is Curse of Chucky, with Mancini stating that with Curse, they could basically have their cake and eat it too, by doing a tonal reboot to the series, making it seem like they are starting from scratch, but then revealed partway through, the events take place after Seed. This was done to not alienate their previous audience whilst adding a brand new one to that already existing audience, something I personally think the team did brilliantly, with Curse being my favourite Child's Play film after the second film, so Curse is good with me, and of course eventually the remake was made by MGM, but that's a video for another time if I ever do a What the Fuck Happened series. Next up, throughout 2014, Don Mancini was running very high after the surprisingly large success of Curse of Chucky, even if it was straight to DVD, as well as his new job working on the third season of Hannibal. This ended up motivating him to come up with a ton of new concepts, 3 of which were revealed as possible Child's Play crossover concepts, which we will go through now. The first concept involved a crossover with the Conjuring franchise, but more specifically Annabelle. The concept would have seen the two killer dolls team up in a way, but apart from that, little else is known, and he didn't reveal anything else. However, it is rumoured that Tiffany would become jealous of Chucky and Annabelle's new friendship, and will begin a plan to kill them both. Now, honestly, this sounds fun, but the likeliness of it happening anytime soon is pretty much zero, with Mancini even stating himself it may take 20 years due to the different studios owning different characters. It should be noted, however, that Annabelle 2013's director was the director of photography on Child's Play 3, so there is a fun connection between both franchises, even if it is relatively minor. The second crossover concept is much more fun in my opinion, and probably the most out of the 3 to actually get made, and this one was nicknamed Chucky on the Orient Express. Now, it's not technically a crossover with the Orient Express movies and based on the books or anything, but it's a fun nickname, so I'm counting it as a crossover. It would essentially focus on Chucky killing people on a train, which, yeah, that sounds like Murder on the Orient Express to me, and follows a very similar plot to the original film of Child's Play, where a child knows Chucky is killing people, but no one believes them. This time though, an old lady with Alzheimer's, because that's not controversial at all, believes him, but she is secretly working with Chucky. An odd but fun concept, and probably, like I said, the most likely to get made. Even if using Alzheimer's, it may be a little bit disrespectful and might need a little bit of changing in later drafts. The third and final crossover from 2014 would have been a Child's Play on Elm Street, with the concept focusing on, you guessed it, Chucky and Freddy essentially doing a kill tally. The idea would focus around them both finding each other, working together in a way, but realising, as Mancini put it, Elm Street isn't big enough for both of them, so whoever kills the most teenagers wins and most likely gets to stay in Elm Street. Honestly, it sounds really damn fun and very familiar to some of the concepts seen with the unmade Freddy vs Jason movies, and I think it would be great, but once again would be very difficult as Warner Brothers owns Freddy as well as Annabelle, but it does sound fun, and if it does get made, it needs to be pretty soon, because I don't think it would be half as fun if Freddy was played by anyone apart from Robert Englund and Chucky was played by anyone apart from Brad Dourif. Now, I'd really like this one to get made, and I think it sounds awesome, and especially with how Cult of Chucky left things, any of these 3 concepts would work with a different Chucky doll in all of them, and they could die at the end fully dead, and we'd still have tons more Chuckies out there. Now, finally, yep, you read the title correctly. This concept by franchise creator Don Mancini is somehow even stranger than the others mentioned in 2014. First of all, yeah, Chucky in space. Chucky, the killer doll, goes into space, and I don't know what else to say, but if the Leprechaun, Pinhead, the Critters, and Jason can go into space, why not Chucky? Mancini spoke specifically to MovieWeb about the idea where Chucky is put on a space shuttle as the crew's mascot, focusing a lot around the 80s. Unbeknownst to them, it's actually the killer doll, or one of the killer dolls, And yeah, he starts to kill him because it's a Chucky movie. And yeah, this idea sounds so dumb, but in all honesty, for this franchise, after we've had doll sex and doll wanking, I honestly won't be surprised if it did happen someday. But for now, it's just another concept for a Child's Play film, which will probably never happen. Even if there is some hope for this one. I've seen some people question how they'd be able to make it on the budget, but if Critters 4 could do in space, and Leprechaun could go into space, even if those effects are terrible, Chucky can easily do it on about $2 million. Now, sadly, yes, this video is much shorter than the rest, but I couldn't find anything else. I tried for hours. I spent a literal whole day searching for all these, and this is all I could find. Now, there are alternative versions of Child's Play 1 for the 3-hour cut, which is completely lost, essentially, and then the 2 TV cuts of Child's Play 2 and Child's Play 3, as well as all the little deleted scenes, but I'm not going to count them. For the Child's Play 3-hour cut, I'm going to do an episode of The Lost on that for the Lost Child's Play 3-hour cut. And then for the 2 TV movie versions of Child's Play 2 and 3, I'm going to be doing them as their own separate video as well for the Forgotten series. So that's it for Chucky. I'm actually surprised how few of these were made, especially when you look at the other slasher franchises that I've done with Friday the 13th and Freddy vs. Jason, and the ones I'm looking at in the future. Halloween especially, there are so many of them. But I guess this is what happens when most of your films are written solely by one dude, with the only exception being the original, and that was through rewrites. So, hey, maybe we'll get some of these in the future, maybe we won't. I'm hopeful for all of them in the future, pretty much. So, until then, thank you very much for watching. If you do enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to like, share and subscribe. I've now actually got a schedule. Are you proud of me? So, for the first Friday of the month, I'll be doing the Unmade series. For the second Friday, I will be doing the Lost series. And then for the third Friday, I will be doing the Forgotten series. And then for fourth and most of the time final Fridays, I will be doing my own personal rankings. If there is another Friday left after that, I'll be looking at some of my old franchise like the Godzilla stuff and some of the stuff for Friday the 13th that I didn't properly look into to basically just factor them out. So all 3 shows will be involved in all the franchises I look at. I'm also looking into doing a 4th show about all the rip-off movies, but honestly, most of these franchises don't have that. They've got some like mockbuster styled stuff, but I want to look at like the really dodgy ones that tried to get away with it. And then, for example, for Friday the 13th, there's the fan films, which are brilliant. I'm not saying that they're not, but they are technically rip-offs or knockoffs or fan films. And that's kind of stuff I'd like to look into maybe one day. It might be a long time from now, but who knows. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. I hope you did enjoy, and I will see you all next Friday. Goodbye.